Good morning. It's Dr. Bill Williams on the Influencers Podcast coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia. And today we're going to have Pete Grimes. He's a legacy thought leader. He's an author. He's a marketer, a brand builder. He's a host on panels. He writes books. We're going to talk about his book, his best-selling book, C-Level Author, 3 Steps to Legacy Thought Leadership. Now, before I go too far, I'm going to bring right to the front here, Pete Grimes, and welcome to our show, Pete.
Hey, Dr. Bill, thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you for that introduction. I got to straighten my posture and everything when you were saying that. It made me feel good.
Well, anybody who writes books, I've got a soft spot for it because I went through and wrote a couple of bestsellers myself. I know the work you put into it. I know that you want to impact the world. So we're here to really find out more about this process that you went through and exactly what you hope to achieve by bringing this book to the world.
Okay, well, cool. Maybe I should, take a step back and say, why I wrote this book. And that the book is really for the hundreds, maybe thousands, or perhaps millions of people out there who have always wanted to write their book, or maybe who've been told by people around them they should really write the book. Or one way or another, they know they have a book in them and they just don't know where to start. And that's the secret is in this book. And because of that, I have to drink the Kool-Aid and I wrote my own book. I did it in a very simple way that I explain in my book, C-Level Author, with a Labrador Retriever looking at me as I sat poolside and got it done in an afternoon. So hopefully that's exciting for the people here.
You did a book in an afternoon. That is motivational right there. You got it done. You took action quickly.
Yeah, no, it was really exciting.
How did this book come to your mind? What was the germ?
So the light bulb moment for me was what I like to say was the day I stole from a successful executive. And I didn't steal from his pockets, but I did steal from his moment. I go and, travel internationally, do a lot of events, as you mentioned in your introduction, as a host, as a presenter. And one of our guests had walked off the stage and he was just beaming. He had given a great presentation. And very innocently, I said, wow, that's amazing. Have you ever thought of doing that as a career, as your next stage in life? The next great thing you contribute to the world. And his shoulders slumped and his posture changed and he looked upset and he said, I'd love to, I just wouldn't know where to begin. And he walked off probably to the bar somewhere and I felt terrible. And it was a minute later where I realized that I'm a marketer. Marketing is putting a megaphone to companies, to people, to initiatives, to ideas, and exposing the world to this, these great insights. And I thought I could help them. And it was then I put it together, which was a quick and easy way for potential authors to get off the bench and onto the field and share their message, make this part of their mission. And then in the back end of that is you have a book, now what? What do you do with it? And so on the marketing side, how do you promote it? How do you do content marketing? How do you gain exposure? And so that was the exciting moment. Like I had turned what was kind of a really sad moment into a cathartic moment.
When you decided to write your book, you sat down and you outlined it. Did you have it in mind that you would have the chapters kind of decision made that you would talk each chapter out? Or did you just start from scratch and just do a free association and go?
No, the whole trick is to have a really solid outline before you start. That's a fantastic question, and I'm glad you asked that because I don't want to make it sound easy. I just want it to sound simple, right? There's a difference. And so you really need a solid outline. And so what I recommend, and at the end of the show, I put together an exercise where your listeners could jump on it as well and create their own outline. But it's essentially to line out the chapters, a working title for each chapter, and the key takeaway for each chapter. And, I did in my book, it's 8. You could do 10, 20, 1,000, however many chapters you want. If you want to write the next great American novel. But really, the idea is to have, the first step is to have a clear message, a clear audience, and then a clear outline. And the outline consists of each chapter with a working title and a takeaway. And then you could fill in their sound bites, put in anecdotes, stories, takeaways, just little bullet points. And you could go, once you're done with chapter 1, you move to chapter 2. Once you're done with chapter 2, you move to chapter 3. The key takeaway, anecdotes, stories, quotes, facts, articles, whatever, just a bullet point. Don't spend any more time than that, and then move on to the next chapter. And once that outline is solid, Dr. Bill, then that's when you carve out some time and speak your book into existence. So the typical book is, say, like a 200-page book is 40 to 60,000 words. That translates into, for most speakers, 6 to 8 hours speaking. So that's why I say you could literally do it in a weekend. I sat poolside. I was dog sitting my brother's Labrador Retriever, Mojo. Mojo and I sat out there. I started the morning with a pot of coffee, moved towards beers in the afternoon. And by as I was getting through the book, looking at my outline, its bullet points, and speaking into an app I use on my phone, which is called Otter AI. And Mojo and I put that book together in a weekend. And so once you have the audio, you send that audio script away to be transcribed. And then there's a lot of massaging to do. Again, I don't want to make it sound easy, just simple. And so once you have that audio done, you send all those files in. I recommend saying, chapter 1, so you know where to copy and paste that in. But then you massage it together into a book. It's, get part of what I've been doing for people is, legacy thought leadership is to help them build the outline, interview them, take that audio and put the book together myself. So once they've told their story, which they're very good at, all the rest is taken care of, because everyone can tell their story. No one knows better than these people, than themselves, what their story is, what is their message for the world. And so that's part of how I, want to motivate people. You don't have to be a writer to become an author, because think about someone who has writing skills. He's an author, but he doesn't have the same experience as this particular executive. He doesn't bring to the world his unique perspective on life, or these problems, or these opportunities. And so by telling the story of what they have done many times before to people on their team, to their family, to their community, they've told that story at least once or twice before, you can imagine. They go through the outline, they tell their story, they share it again. I take that and I turn it into a book. So all the rest is done for them.
So it looks like to me you have created your well-defined products or services. It's not just that you have a book that you can market to people, but you can also take the idea of making a book and you can do some of the service work to guide people through a book and actually get it done by the third parties that do all the parts and pieces of putting the book together.
Right, exactly. So, one of the things I talk about in my book and just in life in general is that not all of us are going to grow up to be presidents or astronauts or MVPs, but we still can make an impact, that there's still an impact we can make. And so once you have your book, I look at a book as one of the centerpiece of the center tool, the base of your masterpiece. And now you can use that as the vehicle for which to expand your message, with which to expand your mission. So I say that from interview to publication, which is step 1, where I do the interview and I take care of all the design, the publication, the editing, the proofreading, the copywriting, and get the book done. And then it's from clicks to clients. And whether it's clients or just opportunities, for speaking opportunities, for example, you need that back end of the marketing side, which is where I excel in as well, where I know that where I've struggled with as well. So I have the blood, sweat, and tears to have learned from this. So you get a website and you have your book and you have your content marketing. And what I tell my authors is just that you don't have to do anything else. Go on doing what you were doing before. Go on sharing your message. Go on continuing to give presentations. Go on meeting with your mentees. Go on podcasts as this one, Dr. Bill. Go on and continue sharing your message as you do. But then there's a certain point where they ask you, what's the next step? And you could say, go to my website. And so that's the other part of the clicks to clients, the marketing aspect, that there's a website that's branded, explains their message in more detail, explains their mission in more detail. And there's, of course, the whole email automation follow-up that supports everything you do. So you bring people into your wheelhouse. You bring people into, I hate to say the word funnel, but you bring them into your world, to your family. And now you have that connection. And once you have that connection, that email, you can send them more valuable information. So it's leading with value, leading by offering them something. And so that's really important. That's part of the marketing thing too. Not asking for something, but giving something.
So what I'm hearing you say is you write the book, and they used to call the book your best business card in the 2000s. You got your book, you get your audience to listen. We'll talk about audience in a minute, but you actually have a service to create the book and get it physically made or digitally made. We need both, right? Digital and electronic. And then you market. So you have a marketing background, marketing services. So you can take from A to Z, help somebody get known and get published, and then get business from their book, The Ultimate Business Card.
Exactly. And, we say business, I look at it as, a pyramid of opportunities. You could get, notoriety, credibility, hireability. If you're looking for a new job, this could help you in the interview. If you're looking for a raise, this could help you get more cachet in your company because now you're more valuable to them as an author. Philanthropy, like part of my sales goes to Delivering Better Lives, which is an organization my brother runs. They build houses, schools, hospitals throughout the world. So philanthropy is something that motivates you too. You can do it. So that's why I always say it's not only about the sales, although those come too, but it's definitely an amazing sales tool, an amazing business card, as you say, but it opens the door to opportunities. You as a spokesperson, as an authority in your field, it gives you that kind of street cred.
So you would say that it's not always about the product or the service. It could be about just the story itself, getting us a story out that's important, or to highlight a mission, to highlight a nonprofit.
Correct. And maybe it's just a legacy piece for your family. Maybe it's like a family heirloom, like something that, you have a written book. I mean, how proud was your family, Dr. Bill, when you came to them that day? It's like, I'm a published author. I mean, let that set in for a little bit. You're like, I'm a published author. And then that's fantastic. Right there is a huge, huge milestone. And, again, my mission is really to help people get to that point. Because a lot of people, look at this blank page and they have writer's block. And so by speaking your book into existence, you overcome the writer's block. You get off the bench into the field and you start playing right away because everyone's told this story. So that's a big thing, overcoming writer's block. There's a chapter in my book I say that Hemingway is your obstacle. Because everyone has this image of Ernest Hemingway struggling with the next great American novel. In French cafes, drinking too much, getting into fights, being depressed, unfortunately suicidal, and like they have this romanticized image. And the spin I would like to do is say that, go to that French cafe, write your book there. Nothing against that. I've done that myself. But instead of struggling away at a keyboard, or notes of paper and crumpling up notes of paper, speak your book into the existence. You could have your phone right there, your outline right there, as you're inspired by the birds and trees and sunshine of Paris. Go down your outline and share your stories and share your anecdotes and send out that audio to a transcription company and start copying and pasting that into your book. and then you're done. Voila. So Hemingway, who I love, by the way, who inspired me to do Running of the Bulls in Pamplona several times, among other crazy Americans who, for some reason, were always the ones that get gored. I was not gored, but it's whenever you read the headlines, injuries today, it's always someone from the United States, unfortunately. But so I did do that. I love Hemingway. I'm not bashing Hemingway, obviously. He's an amazing writer, but it's just that image of the struggling author that people have romanticized that's keeping them from getting their own books done. And that's why I say that, I want to make it easy. You don't need to be a writer to become an author. You could speak your book into existence. I mean, and if people think, well, that's not really the purest way of doing it, tapping away at a keyboard. Throughout history, there are a lot of famous people, influencers, like many of the people listening to your podcast, leaders who didn't write a single word, Socrates, Buddha, Jesus, Marco Polo, Winston Churchill. They had followers and scribes who did it for them, right? And so they never wrote a single word, and yet it's been recorded. This way, I just call it in my book the auto-scribe method, because you're doing the scribing yourself with the technology we have today and getting your book done. And so just want to tell people, I'm trying to remove barriers of entrance. Don't stare at a blank sheet of paper. Don't get writer's block. And don't worry about using technology to do it, because scribes have existed for centuries.
You brought up Hemingway and Pamplona. My Pamplona story is I got on the train in Barcelona and I headed toward Pamplona, and it was kind of late in the afternoon, and I looked out when I got to Pamplona and it was raining. So I stayed on the train and went all the way and went to Madrid instead. I never did stay in Pamplona, but yeah, I do agree with you that if you can find a way to put it on paper, whether it's to speak it out or write it out, type it out, and then get it to somebody who can edit it, you don't have to be so good that you can do the final edit. You have people you can employ to do that for you, make it polished.
Right. And so once you have buy-in that this process can work, the next thing is that, people question, will they have time? And the time is easy because, as you say, you could, we've spoken about, you could do this on a bicycle, elliptical machine, in your car. Doesn't need to be solitary. You could do it, have your wife or kids ask you these questions in your outline and you speak to them. So you kind of make it a team effort. So you're not lonely. And the other obstacle people find is like, will their message resonate? It's that imposter syndrome. Is my message valuable? And so I talk about this in the book, and on my website, there are exercises people can go and do themselves of how you overcome this obstacle as well. And it's just that one is the easiest way is just to imagine conversations you've had with people who've come to you for advice. And how did that make you feel when you gave them valuable information? Two, to pick up the phone and have that conversation with someone like, hey, if I were to give you a playbook, which would accelerate your career or your success or your advancement, your growth, how valuable would it be that to you? And usually the answer is going to be, well, absolutely. I'd love to know, not necessarily a shortcut, but like where to avoid the problems and how to find the solutions. You know what I mean? The playbook for success. So it's one of these exercises. Then you walk away from those two exercises thinking, I do have a valuable message. So now you have the method, and now hopefully you have the motivation as well. And if you could just impact one person's life, how important would that be? If that one person came back and said, Dr. Bill, it's thanks to your book that I was able to achieve XYZ goal, it's going to make you feel amazing. So, and I'm sure you've experienced that as well, Dr. Bill, in your past. And just as a motivation to your listeners to say that your message is valuable. And even if it's just impacting one person's life, how valuable would that be? Or just as a legacy for your family?
You're absolutely right on that. When you talk about walking through an airport or going to a continuing education event, and people that you don't know come up to you and say, "As you from the book," and they start talking about the book that changed their practice, their life. It's quite an experience, and it does make it worthwhile all the time you spent putting together a book when you are recognized. Tell us about your ideal client.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, it's funny. The other day, it kind of was answering both questions. Is someone wrote me and they said, "I'm finally ready to write my book." I was reading one of your posts the other day, and I'm finally ready to write my book. And for me, it was so invigorating and gratifying because someone who was able to get off the bench and into the field, as I say. And you mentioned the airport as well. I was walking through the airport the other day, and it hit me. I actually recorded a video about it as well. As that, as I look down the aisle, there's hundreds and thousands of people walking around, busily buzzing around, and all of these people have stories. All of them have stories to tell and messages to share and lessons to be learned. And I was thinking, but everyone's busy. So, my ideal customer then is that ideal customer, someone who's, successful entrepreneur or executive, or just someone who's a teacher by nature, a leader by nature, and is looking and has always been held back because they didn't have the time, or they weren't sure their message was going to resonate. So by getting these people, imagine just that one hallway in O'Hare where I was flying through Chicago the other day. Imagine just 1%, those thousands of people who were walking around me that day, published their book and got their message out, and were able to affect somebody else. That's the ripple effect I'm looking for. Like they impact someone who impacts someone else, who impacts someone else. So their message and their impact can grow exponentially. It's a ripple effect. And that really, really excites me.
How do you find your clients? You market to people through media, or is it word of mouth from happy clients? What do you find is the best way to find people who can take advantage of these services?
Yes, well, a lot of it is on LinkedIn, right? I do LinkedIn. In fact, the QR code that you see there is to my LinkedIn. I posted a lot.
That way.
Right. And I post a lot of videos there, and that's where I get a lot, because these are executives and entrepreneurs who, this is the fishbowl, the pond where they're swimming. And so that's good. I have done Facebook ads as well. Facebook is amazing for, tinkering with the demographics and the targeting and everything else. It allows you also to test your message and to kind of, what I like to say, prune your ad campaign. You do different variations of your ad, different images, different messages. And you could say like, just like even if you're betting horses or betting roulette or something else, have these different options there, put $5 on each, and I'm not condoning gambling or anything. I'm just saying it's just it's just, a metaphor. And then see how this one went. And if it totally bombed, you eliminate it, you start saving that $5, you put that to an ad that's seeming to do better, getting better traction. And so you get to the point where you're pruning these down, where you have 2 or 3 solid ads where all your money goes behind. And maybe you decide that maybe it's just not these, this $5 an ad budget anymore, but now you're ready to expand your budget to tens or hundreds or thousands or whatever your budget is. But that's a really good way to test your message, A/B testing in Facebook. But again, like I said, I do a lot in LinkedIn particularly. And I have the benefit that I do go speak at a lot of events. And I am surrounded by C-level executives who are telling me, it's like, they come to me without even fishing for their feedback. It's like, I would really love to write a book one day. People have told me I should write a book. The other day I was in an audience and asked them, how many people have thought of writing a book? Show of hands, say 50%. How many have been told by others they should write a book? It was like 75 or 80%, right? So there are a lot of people, even before they want to write a book, they're being told by others they should write a book. And so that is my ideal client. And these are places where you can find them. And a lot of times, like I mentioned, Dr. Bill, is what I'm trying to do and what I suggest to my clients as well, is just lead with value. We're not in this broadcast community anymore where just speaking at people, hopefully, that, you want to give something. And so I really try to give something all the time. And I, have my audience in mind, your audience in mind now. And I really want to make sure that they can get some value, some next steps, provide them a playbook and the motivation So once you know the way and you have the gasoline, you could take that trip, And so once you have the map, which is the playbook, and the gas, the motivation to do that, you'll get to where you want to go. And so that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, it sounds like you're answering my next question already. You're talking about why should somebody choose you once they see your ad, once they see your pitch, they have to choose. And sometimes they're not looking around, they just kind of go, I'm going to go with your service because I see you. But how do you actually get people to click on the buy symbol or, as we say, crush the competition, become the one they choose?
Right. Yeah. And you're right. I think we've been talking a bit about that already, is that one, removing barriers to entrance by providing the solutions, and then two, providing the easiest way to get it done. And so that for me is the 1-2 punch. Like it's, I speak with these people all the time. I interview them. I understand where they're coming from. I went through the process myself. And so I tell them, it's like, I know you're busy. I know you have imposter syndrome. I know you have writer's block. I know you don't think you have enough time, but for ABC reasons, you can overcome those. And, that's what I explain. And that, and I know you don't know where to start. You wouldn't even, as my executive whose afternoon I ruined that day, when the story I told at the beginning of our conversation today, who I stole from, stole his moment, he didn't even know where to start. So this is where you start. So you have this playbook, we have the outline, we'll sit down, we'll talk through the bullet points, talk through the sound bites. You'll have your outline in a weekend, which is a huge step. Once you have your outline, you have your map. And that's when the creative juices start going. And then we'll do an interview. So all you have to do is sit down, speak to me like we're doing now, Dr. Bill, and I'll take care of the rest. And, obviously the marketing side is where I've sharpened my sword my whole career. So I'm very comfortable on the marketing side and put that together. So it's like, sit back, let's have this conversation, and I'll take care of the rest. Your book will be published and we'll start generating these opportunities from day one. And so just making it easy for people, removing the barriers of entrance and making it easy to do, easy to get off the bench and into the field. It's almost football season, so I'm really excited. So I keep using this football analogy. Sorry about that.
It's kind of like what we're doing right now is we're having a conversation. We've got a set of questions that we typically are running through. And it's almost like you could do 10 hours of this type of conversation between you and I, and you'd have yourself a book.
Correct. Exactly. And there are different things like within each chapter that you should be, considering, like what's the takeaway? What's a cool story, an anecdote that supports that, because, facts or figures. So providing support. And so that structure within each chapter is cool, but you're exactly right. So, this would be chapter 4. How do you crush your competition? Several bullet points, have the conversation, transcribe it, copy and paste that back into the outline. And now you have chapter 4 done. It's, again, I don't want to make it sound easy, but I do want to make it sound simple.
Mm-hmm. You have to know your subject. That's the whole key.
Right, exactly. And so, that's a great thing about the competition note, that when they talk about in business that you have to know there's competition, otherwise there's no market. So there being competition is always a good sign, number one. And like if you're putting a restaurant in a neighborhood where there's no restaurants, you think this is great, there's no competition, but there may be a reason for that as well, right? So maybe it's better to be in a neighborhood where there are restaurants to begin with, just, similar but different. It's an analogy. So that's the thing. And so and that's it. That's it. So competition is good, and just differentiating yourself. The same way I like to tell people that why their message is so important to the world. It's a unique message. So each person has a unique service to provide as well, me included.
You talked about it earlier that there's platforms you use to put together your program. Can you outline any particular platforms that you like to use and rely on?
So one of the things that I love the most is Otter AI. I don't make any money from that. That's not a plug, but it's just so convenient. I do that even typing out notes to myself or emails or anything else. it's just so convenient because Siri doesn't understand me. I have a terrible time with Siri. I don't know why. Never gets me. But this Otter AI is perfect. And I could do it with when I'm speaking to people. I show it all the time. I'll speak with an executive at an event or in an airport where there's background noise, and it will record our conversation perfectly. And then you could send to yourself. It allows you to send the audio version or the text version. So you, the famous podcaster, Dr. Bill Influencers Podcast, could use those same audio files and, as well to create an audio book potentially. And then you have the text as well, where you could just copy and paste that into the book. So that's one of my favorites. And then for for email automations, I've been using ActiveCampaign. For funnels, different types of web platforms, email automations and CRMs, but there's so many to talk to. I think the one that stands out for me that's been the easiest, my favorite lately, is Otter AI, to answer your question.
OTTER, AI, Otter.
TER, correct.
That's good. I've heard of that. I looked at it, so I agree with you on that one. 5-star client experience. You give them a result because why? How do you do it?
So the result at the end of the day is the book, right? A book that they're going to be proud of, a book that they're proud to leave behind, a playbook that's going to, impact people's lives, whether it's just as close as their family or as far away as millions of people, because a book can go internationally, And so you mentioned before, is it digital or paperback? Again, this is not a plug, but I did publish in Amazon Kindle publishing. It launched at bestseller in some categories I'm very proud of, that 7 out of 10 categories. So that was really exciting. To stay at a bestseller ranking for months and months and months requires a marketing budget that I did not put my money behind. But the instant embracing of the book idea was really exciting. And so that was good. So how do they get the 5-star experience? Having the conversation. Part of the conversation starts with, who do you want to impact? What problems or would they suffer if they don't hear your message? So people really start to feel that motivation, why their message resonates, And so first, locating that message, locating that target audience for them, working with them to refine and define their message and their target audience is key. So when their book is published, they could start sharing it immediately with people, start seeing the impact immediately with people, start realizing that these people are going to be able to impact other people's lives as well. So it's this, what is that Maslow's theory of needs, where it talks about once your basic needs are all satisfied, like hunger, shelter, love, and everything else, you start thinking about esteem, respect, self-realization. And this is for these people who already feel very successful, but they're looking for the next best thing. This allows them to get there. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
You're getting to the point where you want to give back to the world.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You have your basic needs covered. Kids are in college, your mortgage is paid, just throwing out that as an example. But you're like, what's next? Not everybody wants to spend the rest of their life knocking a little white ball around a lawn somewhere. Not me anyway. I'd rather be giving back somehow. And this is a way to do it, and the book, as we know, history has shown that a book is one of the best vehicles to get your message out. Today, fortunately, it's easier than ever to do it. And so, I just want people to have that same satisfaction, that same gratification, that same idea that when they move on to the next stage of their life, or just that are leaving something behind, that they're leaving something very powerful behind that they're proud of.
I know when I started to write my book, I was talking with Brandon Bouchard, and was one of his students in class and his programs, and I was immersed myself in Brandon's work. And he had one module that was how to write a book. It's very similar to what you've done. And so I went step by step through the workbook and came out with my outline and got the book out, and it became a bestseller. So for you, who's your living mentor and what's the impact they've had on you?
Wow, we couldn't have even rehearsed this any better had we had the time to do it. That's perfect because I can answer that both questions with one anecdote, one story. And my living mentor is my dad, without a doubt. My mom passed away. Otherwise, they'd be 1 and 2 or sharing that gold medal, of course. But my living mentor is absolutely my dad. He's the great generation, stoic mentality. And you ask him, like, how did you overcome these challenges? How did you guys do that as a family, as a community, as a country? There was a lot going on at the time. He's like, we just did. We just did. And that was just it. No questions asked. We just know we're going to do it. See, even that makes me kind of emotional for my dad. And so speaking with him, he has so many anecdotes and so many experiences. And I was thinking, and he reads books like nobody's business. He could, finish a book that looks like a brick in a weekend or in a day. Open up, brew up a pot of coffee and he's done. But he never had a book himself. And then lo and behold, there's this organization called StoryCorps. It's part of the National Archives, and they are putting together an audio history of the world, in the United States and the rest of the world, where they send you how to interview family members and friends, and then they record that, and it's a pretty cool little model, and they send it back to them. So we had this on the website for a while, then we burned it onto a CD, and I was thinking, that's good, and I'm realizing, wow, how many computers how can you use a CD now? So it was getting to the point where I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to access this anymore in this format. My computer doesn't have CD. My car still does a CD player. So I could probably go down and play these CDs of my dad's interview in the car until that's removed as well. And then what do? I don't have these CDs anymore. So it became urgent for me to get this recorded and, something tangible. And it was then I realized I went to Amazon Web Services. I actually recorded it and I got it on a text file, but it was just this like one huge page of text of all these things. And it took a lot of work to comb through it and put chapters to it and form to it and everything else. But then I had a book from my dad, and that was it. And I realized, thanks to StoryCorps, thanks to innovation and advancing and me being worried about being able to access the CD in the future, I was able to put a book together for my dad. And I realized, and that's how I came to it as well. It's like, wow, maybe I have something here. That was my light bulb moment as well, that by interviewing people, you could turn that audio into a book. And that's what got us here today.
Nice story. Dad really did live on in legacy form through that. So that's a great move.
Yeah.
Think about being a 20-year-old again, and you're going to give yourself advice. What would you tell yourself to do now?
Buy Amazon, Google, and Bitcoin. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, I mean, that would be funny because, this question people always ask, and I know it's for something more sentimental and philosophical and profound than that. And I'm sorry, but I was thinking, well, that would be a good place to start then too, just get ahead of the future. But to answer your question more, it's like, one is, like, be happy, but be successful, but being successful is happiness. So I kind of created a mantra for myself. It was like, manage your happiness, like be the manager of your success, be the manager, the CEO of your happiness. This means that no one else is going to be able to help you. Your wife, your husband, your girlfriend, your boss, your family could have a seat at the table, be members of the board, but there's one person who has to make the decision. That's you. So that's it. Just make those decisions really important. Manage your happiness. And that's a podcast I have as well. But it's just something that I've always done. Two, I would say, is that there was a book, From Good to Great. And I think a lot of people feel like they want to be that apex player before they get involved. So I speak Spanish. When I started, I was terrible. I had to drink a lot to get like creative juices going. I lived in Madrid, where you were, Dr. Bill, for a while. But I learned, but what happens to a lot of people is they get hung up, they're embarrassed because they don't speak well enough, so they'll never do it. Same with, I guess I started kite surfing. That was the same thing. At the beginning, you're going to get thrills and stills and eat salt and bumps and bruises and, what is it? Tears and everything else. But it's just part of the process. So that's the thing. You don't have to be great to do it. Just do it. To plagiarize from Nike. Those are those things that I think I would tell myself. And yeah. There's probably more if I had that opportunity. It's funny, in my book, and without being too long-winded, I start out that way. I go, there's the joke is like, hey, you walk into a bar and you have this question, and what it is, and it's like you speaking to your 20-year-old self and you speaking to your future self. So imagine that conversation. It's not walking the bar and there's a priest, a rabbi, and what is that? What is the other thing? But three, though, that there's a standard joke that people do, but it's like your 20-year-old self and your future self. So the 20-year-old self is like you start speaking and you're saying, yeah, I've done this, I've done that. And the 20-year-old self who's as sharp as you and has the energy you have says, oh, that's all really good, present self, but what's next? What's next? And that's how the book starts out. And so the book gives people an idea what is next for them. And the book, how I wrap up the book, and this is where I'll end this part of my story, is that they get back and they sit down again, and who shows up in the bar but your future self. And the future self comes back and he tells you guys, great job. I want you to rest assured that you did well. Your book made an impact. You're able to share your message with other people who went on to help other people. And kind of immortalizing your legacy. Yeah. I love your question, by the way.
Well, let me know, Pete, how can we support you, and give us the links to have people find you in our audience? Because I know a lot of people are interested in having a book, and having somebody do it for you, done for you, got a real ring to it these days.
Right, exactly. Well, I took a page out of your playbook and I put a QR code in the corner there so people could use that to get to my LinkedIn post. Yeah, thank you. And then, and my website is, legacythoughtleadership.com, and you could get there with PeteGrimes.com as well. And Pete Grimes in LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere else is going to get you to me more than likely. But PeteGrimes.com, my name, or legacythoughtleadership.com. You can get there. One thing that I do put on that page is a little video, which is kind of somewhat inspirational. They can get access to the video. And then also there's access to free tools. So you could use these tools to go through these exercises I mentioned before, like how do I know my message resonates? How do I know I could overcome these obstacles? And so all of that's on the website. Hopefully this helps people get motivated and go and get their message out there.
I think people will definitely go to these places and look at what you're doing and see what they can learn. How was your experience on the show today?
Great. Fantastic. I'm really, really honored to be here. You're amazing. It's like having a conversation. It's really, really interesting. I'm really happy about that. So thank you. Exciting.
Let me give you the last word, and I'll come back after you're done and we'll close out the show.
So just to wrap up on my end is like, I really do believe that this is my mission. It motivates me. Hopefully my excitement is contagious and, gets people excited as well. But legacy thought leadership goes beyond just being, the standard influencer. I know we have influencer podcasts, but we were talking before about many influencers today have hijacked this word, and they're only interested in vanity statistics or product placements. And, and I see thought leaders going out there at a lot of events we go and they just open up their PowerPoint and all they want to do is speak at the audience. I think you, Dr. Bill, for what you're doing and your readers probably want to have a stronger impact, more of a long-term effect. And so that's why I like to distinguish what is a legacy thought leader from others and say that I really do believe it's the easiest way to become an author, to strengthen your impact and to grow your impact and strengthen your legacy. I'm sorry. Yeah. So all those things are important, become an author. extend your impact, and strengthen your legacy. With that, hopefully someone here wants to get their message out, and hopefully I could help you do that.
Well, there you have it from Pete Grimes. Capture the QR code today and learn all about what Pete can do to help you. Capture my QR code. I call it PR code. That's probably the same thing, right? My QR code is a link to my digital business card at Ovu. And on that one, I've pretty much featured two things. The link to Influencers Podcast, which you can find all 50 or 60 of my Influencer Podcast, and you'll see Pete's up there in a couple of hours. And then you'll also find a link that goes to On Passive, which is the company that I'm mostly working with today. So On Passive is basically your ticket to freedom. And if you're interested, log in, check it out. We use the latest in AI technology, and we'll set you free with On Passive. So thank you, Pete, for being part of our show today. Legacy Thought Leadership, the book.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bill. Really appreciate you.
You're welcome. Stay tuned for more podcasts from Influencer Podcast, live from Atlanta, Georgia with Dr. Bill Williams. We'll see you all later, and thank you for joining us today.